first of all, thank you to all of you attending. This is the first of many Teach Meets we plan to do within the Twinkl SEN team. So hopefully the advice and information you get today you find helpful. I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker. So I will go through that in a moment. But these sessions, we really want to empower and provide deeper insights and topics in inclusion for parents, educators, and other professionals. And to celebrate Autism Acceptance Month, we have the lovely Lesley-Anne, also known as the Autism Family Godmother, which was founded at the end of 2023. Some of you probably recognise her and are already aware of her work, but I will just give you a brief outline of the depth of her knowledge. She is an autism and family support consultant with a BA in early childhood studies and a master's in special and inclusive education. She is also our newest ambassador for Twinkl SEN Inclusion, which is very exciting. The main thing that stood out for me for Lesley-Anne is her passion for supporting families, organisations and schools in a very neuro-affirming way. I'm sure after this webinar, you'll feel some of that, and you'll also leave with some insight into the importance of supporting autistic learners through transitions and change. So Lesley-Anne, I will hand over to you and we will get started.
Oh, thank you for your kind words, Shannon. What a lovely way to kickstart this Teach Meet indeed. And as Shannon has already said, and just for me to echo, it is so cool to be here with you guys today, especially during Autism Acceptance Month. So hello everyone, I'm Lesley-Anne, and today we're focusing on something that comes up time and time again: transitions and change. What we'll be talking about isn't just practice-based. It's strongly supported in current research around autism and transitions. And therefore, at the end of this talk, you can have the option to have credible articles sent to you directly. Transitions and change in the school day that might seem small to us can in fact feel huge for many learners, and especially autistic learners. As a result, it can often feel intense, to say the least, for those around the child themselves, and of course, everyone involved. And what I want to do today is gently reframe how we understand and support those moments through a trauma-informed and neuro-affirming lens. So let's have a look what we're going to look at today. You'll see up on the slide, there's an agenda. So there's reframing transitions, the autism lens, the power of routine, preparing for transitions, supporting during the transition, after the transition, individualized support, and language which supports safety. You know, when it comes to transitions and change, it's a huge subject, weaved with many differences and at times complexities, depending on who's in front of you. And so I really want us to see this as a taster, a real foundation, but some essential information and material in supporting your learners. I will also be linking up and discuss with you guys some Twinkl resources, which I'm very excited about, and I hope you guys are too. And I would love you to consider using these. Some of these are meaningful to use before transition and change, some are impactful during, and others are beneficial for after. But it should also be noted, use these irresponsibly and they become useless. Next. Right, let's get into it. One of the most important shifts we can make is this: responses to transitions are not behavior problem. They are, in fact, nervous system response. This is crucial message which must transfer into practice. Any behavior response you get when transition or change is taking place, this may look like undesirable, desirable, expected, unexpected, is the nervous system's automatic response. We must separate logic at this point. So just take a moment. How many changes and transitions do we have during the school day? I mean, not just for the learner, but for us, the educators, professionals. I think you all agree there's a lot. When a child is struggling to move from one activity to another, they're not trying to be difficult. They're trying to stay regulated, because transitions often involve uncertainty, sensory change, loss of control, increased demand, and so on. So what we may see as refusal is often overwhelm, many times, 9 times out of 10. And what we see as avoidance is actually dysregulation. So what's actually going on with the body and brain for the individual? A sudden rush, change. The expectation can often feel and be perceived as a demand. And for the body and the brain, this automatically feels unsafe. Why? The body sends signals to the brain and says, hey, you're not safe. This is done by activation of sensations and throwing up photographs, visuals to the brain. This could be from past experiences, the predictive brain, and so on. It goes back and forth and taps on different organs, such as the heart, increase the heart rate, etc. These sensations can also lead to physical ones too. So for example, if you're feeling nervous, your palms beginning to sweat. When this is happening, heightened emotion and feelings, the body can enter a survival state. The amygdala, the survival network, goes off like an alarm. The brain becomes full capacity. So here's the brain, it becomes full in capacity. There's no more. And thus it is harder to access the frontal lobe, where we do all the wonderful thinking, negotiating, reasoning, and so on. And basically, in turn, we are unable to successfully pivot, shift, follow instructions, and so on, owing to the nervous system going into a state of flight, fight, freeze, and fawn, due to sensations which our body has given our brain, which is due to the uncertainty, the change. As well as this, there are so many other factors that will contribute to change and the transitions. Not only what's going on, but the sensory environment, cognitive load. Suddenly the brain must navigate and identify what is priority, initiate, etc., lending on many executive functions, which in a state of fight or flight, freeze or fawn, is really uncomfortable. It can be undesirable, and in some cases, it can feel so unsafe. We'll explore how this can be for autistic individuals specifically in the next section. Next slide, please. So I did say that I was going to make you aware of some of the wonderful Twinkl resources, and here are some. We've got now, next, then boards, change in routine boards, daily routine visuals. This is the stuff I'm talking about. Wonderful to support that transition and change. Next slide, please. So let's look at the autism lens. When we're looking through an autism lens, a few key things become really important. Firstly, predictability equals safety. If I don't know what's coming next, my body may go into an immediate threat response. Secondly, processing time. Autistic learners often need longer to process information, especially during change. I will say here, though, when we're thinking about processing time, it is not necessarily more time, but what are we doing with the time? Is it clear information, which is chopped up into short, concise chunks? Is it accessible information? That could look like scaffolding, and so on. Thirdly, sensory load transitions often mean more noise, more movement, more unpredictability, all at once. So when we see response behaviors such as freezing, refusing, running, even shutting down, these are not choices. No, they are adapted responses, which may be undesirable at times. I get it, yes. But this, again, is not a behavior problem. It is indeed a nervous system challenge. Next slide, please. And with that being said, again, the resources that you could be tapping into, which can support your learner, is emotional chart, thinking about that interoceptive skills, perhaps, am I feeling happy? Am I feeling hungry? And so on. The sensory processing differences, mind map is one of my favorites too. Next slide, please. So now we have some of our neuroscience behind what we can be possibly going on for autistic learners, brain and body, when there is transition and change. We need to now start thinking what we can do about it, not only to support them, but to ensure there is much room for them to thrive, creating opportunity where they feel understood and considered. Routine is often misunderstood. It's not about control or rigidity. With that being said, it may feel and look like this, but actually it's about creating a felt sense of safety. When a child knows what to expect, their nervous system can relax. But here's the important bit. When we're thinking about the power of routine, we're not aiming for rigid routine, we're aiming for flexible predictability. So we provide structure, but we also gently support change within that structure. So an example of that, instead of removing routine as a whole, we prepare for change within it. And that can look like, next slide, please, something like this. So again, going back to the now, next, then board, I can't stress enough how important it is. The change in routine as well. So for example, instead of lunch, we will have picnic outside. When we're thinking about this, we're not just thinking about visual information. For your learner, we need to think about who they are in front of them. They may benefit from text. They may benefit from real life photographs and more. Please do explore. Trial and error, so important. Next slide, please. So at the beginning of our session, I did mention that we would be doing something to support individuals before, during, and after transitions or change. So let's look at what we can take place before, because I truly believe in many cases, the most effective support happens before the transition. So some key strategies include visual schedules, which make the day more predictable. Now, next boards, as I've said, simplifying the information, a countdown for the warnings, reducing sudden change, first, next, then language, creating clarity. So for example, first tidy up, then outside. We're not going to say, first, we're going to tidy up all these toys. Oh, and look at that. There's wonderful this. And then, oh, would you like a snap? And then we're going to go outside and have our picnic. No, we're going to strip it back. We don't want to overwhelm with language. I like to call it fluffy. Fluffy language, put it in the bin. Preparation reduces escalation and allows the brain to access certainty. So going back to the visual of the brain, when it's at full capacity, if we're giving more and more and more fluffy language, the brain can't do that wonderful thinking, and it's too full. Doing this before transition and change is great practice, as the brain at this point will have the capacity to process the information, whereas when heightened emotion and feelings are involved, we're unable to think with logic. Finally, I do believe the most important for this part, preparing transition, the most important part is, and often overlooked ingredient, is time. Time for the learner and time for yourself as well. It's so crucial. Reason for that, when we are rushed, our brain and body is more likely to overspill with capacity and feelings, making more errors. Time is needed. Next slide, please. So you can see here, there's so many wonderful resources. This one I especially love because it's breaking down the morning and the afternoon. And this is great because at times when we're thinking about preparing for the transition, it may be all too much to show the learner what's going on for the whole day. Split it up. I really recommend looking at the morning, then the afternoon. Although some learners may tell you, you know what, I need to know exactly what's happening for my full day. So ensure, again, that trial and error, you tap into that. Next slide, please. Now, let's get into during the moment. So what I say here is less is definitely more. When a child is dysregulated, they cannot process lots of language, as I've said. or even the visual information, like the ones I showed you before, the Twinkl resources. The reason for this is because, as we know, the brain is at full capacity. So what we can instead do is focus on calm tone, minimal words, consistent phrases, and we can support the body too. And this may look like movement, sensory tools, space if needed. Now, to be successful at this, what I'm saying to you is not, for example, okay, come on, here's a fidget. It's a really good fidget. You're going to use this because you're having a hard time. Absolutely not. That can be definitely perceived as a demand, the expectation of having to use something when it may not be the right time. So we really need to think sensibly about this. Instead, think about your language, your positioning, body language, etc. All of these elements have a chance of sending meaningful messages to the individual in front of you. So this may look like, I can see this is very hard for you. I'm going to stand right over here. I am here if you need, and I have some tools that we can explore together if this is something that you would like. This part of it, the supporting during the transition, is all about co-regulation, not conforming or compliance. Because when we think about conforming and compliance, we're actually saying to the autistic person, you need to do what I want you to do. And as we know, strip it right back, transitions and change can be really hard for most people, but especially our autistic learners. Next slide, please. So on the screen here, you can see in a wonderful resource, which is On the Go sensory bag. Now, I will say I have used this myself with children for work, with my own children as well. It is a wonderful one to do, you know, in the background, at home, perhaps after school when all the children have gone, and you can really put what you think would be beneficial for that person. Now, with this being said, it may be that it's rejected, avoided, and so on. Note this down, change it up, but it's a wonderful resource to have for during the transition. Next slide, please. So, with all this being said, what happens after the transition is just as important. So after the transition, regulation matters, because even if the child managed it, dealt with it, coped with it, whatever way, you know, we look at it, we have to understand that they can still be in a state of stress. That was hard. What I did just then really was hard. And that is okay. So what we need to start thinking about is building in regulation time, low demand moments, emotional check-ins. We're not racing and rushing into the next expectation, because why? We know that was hard. What we need to do is remember that the next thing can then be perceived as a demand. And that is even more hard, more transition, and more change. What we need to be focusing on: regulation breaks, low demand window, emotional check-ins, co-regulation, because we're allowing the nervous system to settle. So this includes allowing the individual and yourself the time to process. Like I said before, time is needed. Next slide, please. So I love all these ones that you can see. I mean, I can calm myself down. So taking a deep breath, counting to 10, thinking about what I'm trying to say, keep hands and feet to myself. All of these visuals are wonderful, but they're even more meaningful after transition has taken place if you're doing alongside the individual, not just propped up and expecting them to do it. That is some sophisticated stuff, and we're really not expecting our learners to do that, especially after something hard. Instead, the co-regulation may look like doing it with them, guiding, talking around it, not ensuring that it's, you know, shoved in front of them, but just referencing gentle ways is really important. Next slide, please. Okay, so we now have the possible explanation about what is going on for the autistic individual, and we have explored what we can be doing as a team around the child before, during, and after transition or change. But that's not it. What we can be doing in the background, in the interim, is so important. So to ensure the person in front of you is receiving support, which not only meets their specific and individual needs, but ensure they're having every opportunity to thrive, it is essential that we are doing the meaningful work, and that looks like stripping it right back to the core, back to the basics. So we ask, what did the child need to feel safe during this transition? Were they safe? Did they appear to feel safe? So it's reflecting on practice sets up for more meaningful practice. I'll repeat that. Reflecting on our practice sets us up for more meaningful practice. What went right? What did I need to do more of? Who should have been there? Who should not have been there? What do I need next time? Sensory items? Do I need less of that? You will note here, it's all about personal reflection, not what could the child have done, etc. Because as we know, this is not a behavior response. It can escalate to that, definitely. But for right now, this is not a behavior response. The change, the transition itself, you've guessed it, it's a nervous system challenge. So the support might look like something like this: a personalized transition plans, sensory supports, adjusted expectations, input from families, because we know that families often hold key insights, the good golden nuggets, I like to say. And last, but certainly not least, if you can, talk to the individual. They will know what is going right or wrong. And they may not be able to say it to you as plainly as, that was really hard, because you can be doing other things like observation, observing when went wrong, what happened, what were the trigger points, and so on. Also, besides speaking to the individual and family, MDT meetings are so important. It's about plugging in that time. Don't take it out of your calendar, your diary, because another thing has come. This is so important. It shouldn't just be speaking to another professional, the teacher, the parent at the end of the day as they're rushing to get home to their own families. No, it should be plugged into the diary. I can't stress that enough. It's so important that we're having conversations, not only about the children that we're supporting, but with them too. Invite them along. I urge you to do that. Next slide, please. Now, one of the most impressive things I think with Twinkl resources that I have found, it's been referred to, it's been referenced to, I've gone to schools and I've seen, is the individual educational plan. So the IEP, it's already there. You know, it sets out exactly what you need to look at, which is wonderful. I want to know what the interventions are. I want to know what the documents are. Is there anyone supporting the individual? They may look like speech and language therapist, someone like myself, autism specialist consultant, and so on. The sensory preferences resource is equally as brilliant as the IEP. This is something that, again, doing with the individual, chef's kiss, I think. Really great stuff. Thank you. Next slide. Now, we could not finish up without stating what I feel is obvious, but very necessary to reinforce. The language we use can either increase stress or it can, in fact, reduce it. And that is to say, no matter what wonderful resource, and believe me, there's some pretty, wonderful stuff going on with Twinkl. Whatever you have got going on up your sleeve, it doesn't matter about those wonderful resources. It's about how we speak and the language we use. That's so important. So for example, instead of hurry up, we may say, we're getting ready. Instead of you have to, we may say, first this, next this, then that. Our nervous system can then impact how someone else's nervous system. Sometimes the most important thing for people are another nervous system, and then it can be the least important thing is someone else's nervous system. So again, depending on what you're doing is so important. Small shifts in language create big shifts in sense of safety. Next slide, please. And finally, transitions and change can feel unsafe for many, and thus we must prepare everyone involved and continue to do things with our individuals and not to them. Get them along, involve them. If we can't have the conversations with them, we can observe, have MDT meetings, and so on. It's so important to think that systems need to be created to support them. That's why we're having talks like this. Thank you so much, everyone. I've so enjoyed my time with you today. You'll see my information on the slides. I'm on socials at the Autism Family Godmother, and of course my website is there. Please do note it down. I'd love to hear from you, and please do, follow the Autism Family Godmother for much, much more. I just wanted to take time to say thank you so much to Twinkl for providing a space for me to do my thing, especially to Shannon. You've been wonderful. So thank you kindly, everyone.